In a revelation that rocked not just the royal family, but the entire nation, palace insiders confirmed just 5 minutes ago that Queen Elizabeth left her undisclosed private fortune solely to Archie Mountbatten Windsor. Prince Harry, blindsided, was reportedly speechless. How did this explosive decision come to light, and why now? The answer has sent shockwaves through the monarchy's inner corridors and sparked a chain reaction no one saw coming. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. The announcement did not come wrapped in ceremony or softened by tradition. It arrived like a thunderclap, an internal memo leaked, a confirmation whispered, and within moments the truth was impossible to contain. The Queen's undisclosed private fortune, a reserve no public ledger had ever fully accounted for, had been left entirely to Archie, not to Charles, not to William, not even shared among grandchildren as protocol might suggest, solely to the youngest son of Prince Harry. The shock was immediate and visceral. Within minutes, private phones across royal residences lit up with urgent calls. Advisors demanded clarification. Lawyers scrambled to confirm the language of the will. And somewhere between disbelief and revelation, one truth hardened into fact: this was deliberate. Prince Harry, sources claim, learned of the decision through a secure video briefing meant to prepare him before the news went public, but no preparation could soften what he heard. His expression reportedly drained of colour as palace officials outlined the scale of the inheritance. It wasn't symbolic, it wasn't modest, it was vast. A private fortune built quietly over decades, investments, properties, holdings carefully shielded from public scrutiny, now resting in the name of a child. Harry did not celebrate. He did not react with triumph. Instead, there was silence. A long, heavy silence that those on the call would later describe as more powerful than any outburst. Back in London, confusion turned to unrest. Senior aides paced corridors, whispering in tight circles. How had this slipped through layers of oversight? Why had no one outside a tiny inner circle known? The monarchy thrives on continuity, on predictable lines of succession and influence. Yet this decision had shattered predictability. It suggested not only intent, but secrecy. And as financial advisors began retracing transactions from the Queen's final years, faint outlines of a hidden strategy started to emerge. Trust accounts established quietly, discreet transfers authorized without fanfare, consultations with private banking institutions known for absolute discretion. The Queen had not acted impulsively. She had planned. More unsettling still was the revelation that neither Harry nor Meghan had prior knowledge of Archie being named sole beneficiary. There were no hints, no veiled conversations, no coded promises. If this had been a gesture of reconciliation, it was delivered without warning. If it was protection, it was executed without consultation. And that raised a deeper, more dangerous question. Was this part of a contingency plan crafted long ago? A safeguard triggered only under specific conditions? Insiders began whispering about drafts of earlier wills, about amendments quietly sealed. Each rumor added another layer of intrigue. Each unanswered question widened the fracture inside the family. Because this was not just about money, it was about trust, about legacy, about the Queen's final assertion of authority beyond her lifetime. By placing the entirety of her private fortune in Archie's name, she had effectively bypassed generations of royal expectation. She had redirected power in a way that could not be undone without public confrontation. And as the reality settled in, one chilling possibility surfaced: this was not an act of favoritism. It was a statement, but to understand how such an inheritance could bypass generations and land solely in Archie's name, we must journey back into the secret web Queen Elizabeth spun during her final years. While the world believed the Queen's estate was fully accounted for, she had quietly built a separate fortune kept in offshore trusts, coded bonds, and discreet land holdings. No press reports, no public filings. And now it's all gone to one name, Archie. What drove the Queen to take such an unprecedented and secretive path? As the dust from the initial shock began to settle, Investigators started peeling back the hidden layers of the Queen's financial dealings, only to uncover a shadowy network of quiet maneuvers that stretched back nearly a decade. It began with subtle diversions of income from personal royal properties into offshore holding companies registered under aliases, most notably a discreet financial funnel routed through the Channel Islands. The Queen, known for her composed public face, had spent her twilight years quietly reshaping her financial legacy outside the traditional mechanisms of the crown. The term the Elizab ETH reserve began surfacing in exclusive banking circles long before her passing, whispered like an urban legend. Until now. That reserve, it turns out, was not only real but deliberately guarded from palace oversight. Senior insiders have come forward to reveal that Elizabeth held a series of meetings over the course of several years with Swiss wealth management advisors, known for their ironclad secrecy and allegiance to generational dynasties. These meetings, always off the books, took place under the pretext of personal retreats. But the timing of these excursions aligns with now confirmed transfers and legal reshuffles that built an entirely separate financial world, far from the scrutiny of Parliament, public record, or even her immediate family. What's even more alarming is the total absence of any reference to these assets in previous iterations of her will. The trail was not just hidden, it was wiped clean. More pieces fell into place when investigators re-examined the Queen's final visit to Balmoral. On the surface, it was a ceremonial farewell to the estate she cherished. But behind closed doors, private notaries were reportedly flown in. Documents were signed in absolute secrecy. Aides were rotated out hourly to prevent pattern recognition. It was there, many now believe, that the final decision to name Archie as the sole heir to this hidden fortune was sealed with untraceable precision. And it was at Balmoral, notably, that two high-ranking palace aides, the only individuals believed to have had full knowledge of the Queen's covert wealth, disappeared from royal operations entirely. No explanation, no official notice, just silence. The pieces point to a premedita. TED plan, orchestrated with stunning foresight, designed not just to protect Archie, but to circumvent the entire royal machinery. The Queen, perhaps disillusioned by the constant battles within her family, may have chosen to place her trust in the only person untouched by scandal, politics, or expectation, a child. The Elizabeth Reserve wasn't an act of defiance, it was an act of escape, a retreat from the burdens of tradition into the innocence of a new generation. And as the royals scramble to react, the deeper question lingers like a storm on the horizon. What did the Queen see that made her believe this was the only way? But the real turning point wasn't financial, it was emotional. It began when the Queen witnessed something no camera ever captured, something that changed everything she thought she knew about loyalty. Buried in the archives of Windsor is a forgotten moment, one that changed the Queen's heart forever. It wasn't a political shift or a scandal. It was a single, quiet interaction between a child and his great-grandmother, and it altered the course of royal succession and inheritance in ways no one foresaw. It happened away from public view, during one of the Queen's final private retreats to Windsor. Archie had been brought along by Harry, reportedly at the Queen's own request. No formal cameras, no staff hovering with protocol. Just family, just time. But in that moment, no royal biographer ever captured something happened. Staff who later saw the Queen said she was visibly changed. Her composure, usually so unshakable, appeared fractured. One aide described her expression as haunted, but full of peace. It was as though she had seen the future in Hild's eyes and had suddenly realized everything the crown had failed to protect. That same night, she wrote a diary entry in her personal leather journal, an entry since sealed by the royal archivist, but rumored to contain a line that has since echoed through royal halls like a ghost. He is untouched. He is the last of us who hasn't been burned by it. The Queen, for all her decades of service, understood legacy not just as duty, but as burden. And in that moment, she began to question whether leaving it to those who had already been consumed by its weight was truly just. It wasn't long after that private encounter that she began asking pointed questions about what parts of her personal estate could be separated from the royal framework. Her inquiries were subtle, disguised as casual musings, but to those paying close attention, it was a shift in direction and it had intent. Her mistrust of certain senior royals was already simmering beneath the surface. Rumors had long swirled about her private discontent with the way palace narratives were manipulated. She was no stranger to loyalty being transactional. She had seen alliances fracture over power, watched dignity sacrificed for favor, and remained silent as her own family tore itself apart. But something about Archie, perhaps his innocence, perhaps his distance from the throne, made her rethink it all. In him, she saw a future that might finally be spared the rot of tradition. In the days following that visit, palace insiders noticed a shift in her schedule. Meetings with legal advisors became more frequent. Files that hadn't been touched in years were quietly requested, and behind closed doors she began drafting a a secret legal amendment to her existing will. It was coded, discreet, and locked behind a veil of legality so dense only a few trusted aides knew what it truly meant. And as she signed that page, her face reportedly calm but her hands trembling, the Queen may have made the most unorthodox decision of her reign, not one of ceremony or succession, but of legacy and protection. As the Queen moved in silence, a parallel power struggle began brewing, one where Camilla and Charles found themselves increasingly at odds with Harry and Meghan. When whispers of the Queen's secret wealth and its unusual recipient began to circulate, King Charles reportedly flew into a quiet panic. Camilla demanded answers, but the deeper they dug, the more they realized how little control they had. A new power center was forming, and it wasn't loyal to the throne, it was loyal to Archie. Behind the tightly sealed doors of Clarence House, the atmosphere shifted from quiet confusion to urgent crisis. Charles called for an emergency strategy meeting, attended only by his most trusted inner circle, Camilla chief among them. Tension gripped the room as the official line from palace accountants began to unravel. The Queen's private fortune had already been moved, not promised, not pending, transferred. And the beneficiary, a child outside the royal institution's traditional line of control. Camilla, blindsided and furious, reportedly stormed out of the initial briefing, slamming the door with a bitter warning that echoed down the corridor. She erased me with one signature. She hadn't just been left out, she had been written out. Entirely. But the panic didn't end with Camilla. Charles, usually composed even under pressure, confronted the royal financial trustees in a private chamber the following morning. Voices were raised, documents were demanded. Yet nothing changed the stark reality: this move was untouchable. The Queen had structured the entire transaction with the assistance of independent legal advisors, beyond the Crown's reach. The money had been sheltered, the codicil locked, and the timeline confirmed. The transfer began months before her death. Charles was left holding nothing but the symbolic crown, while the real legacy, the liquid legacy, slipped beyond his grasp. And yet, the silence surrounding Meghan's name raised even more questions. Nowhere in any legal documentation did she appear. No joint guardianship, no clause of influence, no rights over the financial mechanisms established in Archie's name. It was as if the Queen had purposely isolated the child from both of his parents, wrapping him in a legal firewall that even Harry and Meghan couldn't penetrate. This wasn't about favoritism. This was about insulation. Power passed down untouched. Behind closed doors, Charles uttered a phrase to one of his oldest confidants that chilled the air. "This could undo everything we've built." It was more than inheritance. It was precedent. If a future monarch could be bypassed financially by a reigning queen, what would stop future heirs from being strategically written out altogether? The implications stretched beyond family. They threatened the system itself. A monarchy held together by centuries of tradition was suddenly being unraveled not through revolution, but through a quiet signature on a discreet document buried beneath Balmoral's ancient stones. The media continued to speculate. Palace aides scrambled to contain the growing narrative. But the power was shifting in real time. Archie was now not just a symbol of the next generation, he was, unknowingly, the fulcrum around which royal influence was rebalancing. And while Charles and Camilla strategized behind heavy doors, one fact became undeniable. The center of control had moved, and it no longer revolved around the crown. Yet even more unnerving than the Queen's final act was the role of one unexpected royal figure, someone who not only knew about the fortune, but may have helped secure it. Long hailed as the monarchy's steadiest hand, Princess Anne had long operated in the shadows, but now sources reveal she may have known all along. Not only that, she may have guided the Queen's decision. Why would Anne help the fortune pass to Archie and exclude the rest of the family? It begins with a quiet string of meetings that seemed harmless at first. Princess Anne, known for her efficiency and silence, had been engaging in periodic sessions with senior royal accountants, always off the record, always without aides. She never spoke about the meetings publicly, and few questioned her motives. But now, in light of the Queen's decision, those meetings have taken on a new and ominous weight. Financial logs show appointments cross-referenced with the very professionals who helped structure the Queen's hidden estate. Anne wasn't watching from the sidelines. She was participating, possibly directing, and what's even more startling is what palace staff overheard in hushed tones during those visits, Anne murmuring that the child deserves a clean legacy. A clean legacy. Not just wealth, not just inheritance, but liberation from the corruption that had touched every other royal hand. The bond between the Queen and Anne had always been uniquely intimate, built not on sentiment, but on shared silence and mutual understanding. Of all her children, Elizabeth reportedly trusted Anne most, not for her warmth, but for her discipline, for her ability to act without ego, without scandal. It's that trust, cultivated over a lifetime, that may have made Anne the single gatekeeper of the Queen's final wishes. But trust is dangerous when left unchecked. And when palace IT teams recently ran a routine audit of digital correspondence from Anne's office, something chilling emerged: a deletion pattern. Not accidental, intentional. Financial communications from the months leading to the Queen's death were gone, scrubbed, no backups, no traces. And then came the whispers of an older Pact, one forged as far back as 2015. That year, the Queen reportedly told Anne in private that she wanted an escape route for the monarchy's youngest generation, a way to leave them something not bound by titles, tabloids, or tradition. That conversation, dismissed at the time as a philosophical musing, now reads like prophecy. And Anne, ever the executor, may have quietly made sure it came true. It wasn't betrayal. Not in her eyes. It was duty. Not to the institution, but to a bloodline she believed deserved redemption. Her silence now is louder than any words. Anne's recent withdrawal from press engagements has sparked speculation across palace circles. She's avoiding cameras, dodging reporters, cancelling appearances without explanation. It's not grief, it's strategy. Anne understands better than anyone that being seen would mean being questioned. And questions now are the last thing she wants. Because if the truth came out that she helped orchestrate the transfer of power away from the throne and toward a child exiled from its protection, then the quiet architect of stability may just become the face of revolution. But if Anne was a protector, another figure saw the inheritance as a betrayal and began planning a retaliation that would shift the royal dynamics once more. Behind palace smiles and public handshakes, the icy war between Prince William and Prince Harry had never truly ended. Now, with this shocking inheritance revelation, old wounds reopened, and William, feeling sidelined yet again, took measures that stunned even his closest advisors. For years, the rivalry had simmered beneath royal formality, suppressed by duty and carefully choreographed appearances. But when William learned that Archie, Harry's son, had been granted sole claim to the Queen's hidden fortune, something inside him snapped. He didn't yell. He didn't go to the press. Instead, he called for an immediate legal audit of all inheritance channels linked to the crown. It was a move that caught even palace insiders off guard. William wasn't questioning just this act. He was challenging the very mechanisms that allowed it to unfold unnoticed. He reportedly wanted answers, not only about the money, but about the silence that surrounded it. Why was the Queen's private fortune never discussed? Why wasn't he, as the heir to the throne, even aware of its existence? Those close to him described a growing storm of disbelief and quiet fury. Privately, he vented to Charles in what became a rare, emotionally charged argument between father and son. According to leaked transcripts, William pressed his father with a single, devastating line, "Do you even realize what she's done?" The conversation, sources claim, ended in total silence. William walked out. Charles didn't follow. And just like that, the distance between father and future king widened in a way no royal advisor could repair. The tension bled into public life. Catherine, usually composed, appeared visibly strained at her most recent engagement. Her smile faltered, her hand trembled slightly during a ceremonial address. Though nothing was said, the images told their own story. She too had been caught off guard, blindsided by a decision that not only bypassed her children but redefined the royal future without a single consultation. In the days that followed, William made a chilling declaration to a close friend, one that would later be leaked through encrypted correspondence. He can have the money, he won't have the legacy. It wasn't about wealth, it was about inheritance of meaning, of symbolism, of power. William was already drawing the battle lines, and he wasn't stopping there. Behind the scenes, he began orchestrating a plan to reassert control over the crown's symbolic powers. Subtle gestures, strategic appearances, a shift in how public ceremonies were delegated. Every move was calculated to reinforce one idea: the legacy of the monarchy would still run through him. Not Harry, not Archie. This wasn't about rivalry anymore, it was about reclaiming the narrative. Because in William's eyes, the Queen's Act had rewritten the ending of a story still being written. Yet while the royal brothers collided once more, it was Harry's private reaction, raw, unscripted, and utterly human, that revealed the emotional cost of the Queen's last decision. When news of the Queen's secret fortune hit Harry, he wasn't triumphant, he was broken. Sources close to him say he collapsed into tears. Not because Archie inherited it, but because of what it revealed about trust, abandonment, and the role he was never meant to play. The announcement didn't land on Harry like a gift, it landed like a betrayal. For all the speeches, for all the tributes, the Queen never told him, not once, not even a quiet whisper before she passed. The woman he had adored, the grandmother he believed still saw him as more than a royal refugee, had made the most monumental decision of her life and left him completely in the dark. His immediate reaction, as reported by a close family friend, was a single sentence, whispered through shaking breath: "I didn't want her money, I wanted her honesty." That admission shattered the illusion, because this wasn't about wealth, it was about being seen, about knowing you mattered enough to be told the truth. Meghan, usually composed, was reportedly frozen in disbelief as the full scope unfolded. Not a single mention of her, not even as Archie's mother. No trust clauses, no guardianship directions, nothing. It was as if the Queen had divided the legacy not just from the institution, but from the family itself, and it drove a wedge through the last remnants of Harry's loyalty to the monarchy. What had been grief now turned to confusion, then to heartbreak. Behind closed doors, Harry made a call to Princess Anne, a voice he had once respected above all others in the palace. That conversation, brief and stilted, revealed everything. When he asked if she'd known, Anne's silence said it all. He hung up before she could answer. It wasn't the money. It was what the money stood for. A message, a burden, a torch passed to someone who never asked for it. Harry began to question whether this fortune, this tightly wound knot of secrecy, politics, and legacy, was even meant for Archie at all. Or was it meant for him to carry, to protect, to fix what had already been broken beyond repair? The emotional weight became too heavy to ignore, and that's when the unthinkable started to emerge. Whispers that Harry might refuse it, that he would decline the inheritance or redistribute it through foundations outside the royal fold, not to make a statement, but to free himself, because deep down, Harry knew accepting this gift meant accepting a version of his past he was still trying to escape. It meant embracing a legacy that never made space for him while he was in it, yet now handed him its most value. Abel's secret in silence. And in that silence, Harry found the loudest answer of all. He had never truly belonged, not as a royal, not as a rebel, and now, not even as a son, just as a name connected to a child now burdened with the weight of an empire. But the decision may no longer be his alone, because even as he wrestles with legacy, the Crown's legal forces are preparing a challenge. The Crown has launched a legal review to challenge the legitimacy of the Queen's last-minute inheritance. But Meghan, ever the strategist, is preparing a counter-strike that could unravel royal finances and reputations for good. What comes next isn't just a court battle. It's a war for control over the monarchy's future narrative. No sooner had the news of the inheritance gone public than the Crown's legal machinery sprang into motion. Lawyers, handpicked from the most discreet chambers in London, began poring over the Queen's codicil with surgical precision. Their objective was clear: to invalidate the transfer, to question its timing, its authorship, and most of all its secrecy. They argued that the Queen, in her final days, may have been unduly influenced, that the very isolation that protected her privacy also left her vulnerable. But what they didn't anticipate was Meghan's response, swift, silent, and devastating. In California, far from the palace gates, she convened a legal war council of her own. Top-tier attorneys in international trust law were brought in under NDAs. Offshore banking experts were retained. A private forensic accounting team began reconstructing the trail of the Elizabeth reserve digit by digit. At the heart of the Crown's challenge was jurisdiction. The Queen's estate had spanned continents. Properties in Scotland, investments in Bermuda, a little-known trust in Luxembourg. The legal team believed they could delay access to key assets long enough to either block Archie's control or reclaim them under royal oversight. They quietly moved to freeze several accounts, arguing that their ties to the Crown's public finances created legal ambiguity. It was a calculated risk. If the freeze succeeded, they could cripple the trust's momentum. But if it failed, they would expose just how much of the monarchy's wealth lay beyond Parliament's reach. Meanwhile, whispers of a possible public hearing ignited a media wildfire. Headlines speculated whether this would be the most explosive royal legal case since the abdication crisis. Would Harry be forced to testify? Would Anne be subpoenaed? Would centuries of royal financial secrecy finally be dragged into the light? The palace remained silent, but Meghan did not. Privately, she was reported to have told her inner circle, "They came for our silence, they'll get our truth." It wasn't just a statement, it was a warning. If the Crown pursued this, the Sussexes would not just defend, they would expose. Behind the legal walls, the threat loomed larger than any courtroom. Because Meghan's team had begun unearthing documents from the Queen's financial history that connected to royal figures far beyond Archie. Older trusts, unrecorded gifts, potential conflicts buried for decades. If those files reached the public domain, it wouldn't just reshape the inheritance narrative, it could trigger a wave of audits that would rattle every royal ledger from Sandringham to St. James's, and so the war lines were drawn. On one side, the Crown, desperate to reclaim control. On the other, Meghan, wielding law like a scalpel. But this wasn't just about justice or money. It was about memory, legacy, truth, and the cost of silence. One side wanted to bury the Queen's final act. The other wanted to protect it with fire. But even as the royals brace for courtrooms and media wars, another letter hidden in the Queen's personal effects emerges, and its contents may be the final shattering blow. In the Queen's personal desk drawer, nestled beneath decades of handwritten notes, a single sealed letter was found addressed to the boy who carries my peace. As royal hands trembled to open it, the final truth was laid bare. Not about money, not about power, but about what the Queen saw in Archie, that she saw in no one else. The letter was written in the Queen's unmistakable handwriting, delicate but deliberate. Dated 6 months before her passing, it bore no royal seal, no crest, only her signature and one line above the fold. For when he is old enough to understand. What followed were not instructions, but reflections. A lifetime of weight captured in paragraphs so personal they pierced the stoic walls of the monarchy. She spoke of wounds never healed, choices never spoken aloud, and a world that often mistook duty for love. She described how the institution she had served faithfully had over time become a prison to some and a battlefield to others. And then, she wrote of Archie, she called him her new page. Not an heir, not a pawn, but a symbol, a chance, a soul untouched by palace politics or tabloid wars. She wrote of watching him that day at Windsor, the same day that changed everything, in seeing in his innocence a quiet redemption, not of the crown, but of the family. She admitted that her reign had preserved the monarchy, but not without cost, and in Archie she saw the chance for something that could never be built through titles or bloodlines alone: peace. Harry, upon reading the letter, reportedly broke down again, not from pain but from clarity. For all the secrets, all the silence, this letter was the one truth he had longed for. Acknowledgement not just of Archie's inheritance, but of the burden Harry himself had carried in silence for decades. Charles, too, was said to be moved to tears by the final lines. Lines that did not accuse, but gently released. "This is not your burden, it is your freedom." Those words would echo louder than any official statement. The letter didn't stay hidden for long. It leaked, as such things always do. But rather than scandalize, it sparked something else entirely: a shift. Public opinion, once sharply divided, began to soften. Debates turned into reflections. The world, for a rare moment, paused to consider what monarchy really means when stripped of spectacle. The Queen's final words, written in solitude, now resonated far beyond palace gates. Because in the end, she hadn't passed on her fortune, she had passed on her truth. A truth wrapped not in jewels or legacy, but in grace. As the monarchy reels from this series of revelations, one truth remains: the future isn't shaped in the throne room. It's born in the quiet decisions made far from the crown's gaze. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.